It's not Pamela's workout, it's Pamela's new workout. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is just a YouTube version of the Twitch streams that we do several times a week, but I know not everybody likes Twitch, and so therefore, anytime we do a running the game video, hello everybody, anytime we do a running the game video, I want to make sure, hello Chicago, that one of my favorite YouTubers is from Chicago. Anytime we do a running the game video, I want to make sure we hang out. What's making that luscious reverbish sound? Well, Neil Goldman, that is clouds, which is evidence of my basicness because I love clouds. For those of you trying to get the bot to work, the bot seems a little bit overwhelmed right now. That what you were looking at was one instantiation of my modular synthesizer, which I call the Time Rider. And the only reason I call it the Time Rider is because when you go on, there's a site called Modular Grid where you can kind of virtually build your modular synthesizer and figure out how much is this going to cost? Do I have enough space? Do I have enough power? And when you do that, it says, hey, what are you going to call this thing? And I was like, what am I going to call it? I don't know what I'm going to call it. Do people call their instruments? It's the Time Rider. I don't know where that came from. It's not really, there's a movie called that, but it's not based on that. So that's what that is. It's a musical instrument and you put it together and plug it in and patch it together using patch cables, using little mono. They look like headphone cables, but they're all mono. And that was what's called a generative patch, where once it's set up, you press go and you sit back and you don't know what it's going to sound like. And it just slowly evolves over time. And it's my new hobby. So thanks for being an awesome dude, says Christopher Affairs. Well, thank you for being an awesome dude. Thank you for being here. That makes you more awesome than me. I just make these things. It is you who are here consuming them and being the community. TS cables. Yes. Tip and shank or whatever, not tip and ring and shank or whatever the S is. Greetings from Denmark. Hello, Denmark. I've had several friends of mine, are Danish. Favorite musical mode? I don't know. Mixolydian? You look very nice today. Well, this is not the How Does Matt Look stream, but I appreciate it. So, how was the great question, Gabriel? How was the feedback from the one-on-one video? Good. I was worried that, hello, Ryan's cat. I was worried that it wouldn't be useful. I honestly like, with videos like that, and I think the next video is going to be about traps, because it is a subject that came up. Somebody asked me a question about traps, a good question, in one of our Twitch live streams this week, and it took me from thinking I didn't really have anything to say about traps to thinking, actually, I think I probably do have something to say about traps. And the one-on-one video is kind of the same. I think we have now firmly established ourselves in the having left the era of Dungeon Mastering 101, and we're now easily into like our second semester, and so we can do stuff like talk about these somewhat more complex topics that require more work on the Dungeon Master, and the one-on-one videos but I wasn't sure it was going to work because, like I said in the video, I don't really have a checklist, and I just know you can do it. And often my videos, sometimes the best advice I can give you is just, hey, you can do it, this is possible. And just showing people it's possible. I mean, how much of my channel is that? A lot of my channel is just, this can be done. You can play D&D like this, or you can play D&D like this. And people go. So having just said in the beginning, just do it. Just do it. You're going to have fun. Then it's mostly just guidelines rather than a checklist. But people responded really positive to it. And so it makes me feel like, the goal is, A, that people like the video and they enjoy watching it. That's, a big part of why I spend time writing a script and we spend all this time on presentation is because I just want, if we're going to hang out for 20 minutes in a direct-to-camera scripted video, I want it to be enjoyable to watch. But apart from that, if some people then go and try it, if some people then go and try playing one-on-one, then I feel like we did a good job. And yeah. Do I have anything to say on one-on-one play being antithetical to streaming? I'm not, but Lobster Shoes, I don't have, I don't know how one, I mean, I am not somebody who consumes people playing D&D on YouTube recreationally. I watched, 40 to 60 hours of that first Critical Role series, which it means that I've consumed more Critical Role in my life than I have Star Wars. right? So in one sense, that's a lot. That's more Critical Role than I ever consumed Indiana Jones, or even like, Star Trek movies or anything like that. But from another standpoint, some people thought that meant that I hadn't really watched any of it. So, but I knew those people. I knew, I was friends with Matt and Liam before it started, and I found that very entertaining. But eventually, I was like, I got stuff to do. I got work to do, and investing 4 hours a week in the show, I just don't have time. It's not that it's not good. It's just I don't have time. So it's not clear to me that streaming D&D is a spectator, with perhaps one exception. It's not clear to me that streaming D&D is a spectator sport in the first place. So I don't know how much of a hair are we splitting if we say that streaming one-on-one isn't that entertaining compared to playing with a large group. I think it could probably be really entertaining. In fact, I think in some ways, depending on your streaming setup, I think it could be better, because if you're not all at the table, which a lot of D&D streams are not all at the table, then a one-on-one experience, I think, can be a lot more what people, like I said in the video, what people imagine D&D to be like, because you don't have all these people in Skype or Vox, some VoIP solution, all trying to talk over each other and stuttering and wait, it's not, is my mic working? And so if it's just one-on-one, then it's a lot smoother, I think. But otherwise, I don't know why it should be good or bad. Morgan Doomkin, occasionally, a couple times a year, I would say, and we try to get together a couple times a year. What are some tricks and tips when it comes to foreshadowing? I don't know. Just do it. If you have ideas, if there's stuff coming up in your game and you want to foreshadow it, the goal is, this is, I think, one of the mistakes we make as kind of writers and dungeon masters, because the Venn diagram of writing and dungeon mastering it's pretty close. You can learn a lot about writing and about drama just being a dungeon master, and vice versa. In fact, Dungeon Master, I think, is a great way to learn how to be a writer. I need to put some music on, otherwise we're all going to go insane. Because unlike writing, whether you want to be a screenwriter or a novelist or whatever, if your stuff doesn't work, you have an audience of players, and you're going to know immediately. You're going to know immediately, which is feedback that we don't normally get as writers. But I think with foreshadowing, one of the things that we tend to imagine is that first of all, foreshadowing shouldn't seem like foreshadowing at first. It should only seem like foreshadowing sort of after the fact. Otherwise, you're just telegraphing. You're just you're telling the batter what pitch is coming, and that's not as much fun. And we tend to kind of go overboard. We tend to overdo it when we want to foreshadow stuff, and then it becomes obvious we're doing it, and then it's not foreshadowing anymore. It's five shadowing. Let's put on some of the official stream music of M, C, and D, and M, which is State Azure, one of my modular heroes. Somebody asked in a previous stream, let's get us down to negative 40 dB. It looks a little bit too loud. Somebody asked in a previous stream if I listen to State Azure like outside of this context. Yeah, a lot. Good afternoon, Grim Brother 4. So yeah, it's I think the tendency when we're imagining, like, how's the Kingdoms of Warfare playtest going? That's a great question. That's a super good question for this stream. I think that it's, I remember watching Aliens in the theater, and when Sigourney Weaver uses the power loader, my mom turned, I was just like, that thing's amazing. It looked real, right? Didn't look like I was probably like 15 when that movie came out, and I was like, it looks real. It looks like that would really work. And I remember sitting there just fascinated, thinking to myself at that age, I was thinking, would it be easier, I wonder, just to build that thing and make it actually function than to do it as a prop or something? And my mom turns to me and she goes, in the middle of the movie, she goes, I bet they're going to use that thing against the alien, right? That's foreshadowing. She picked up on that because she was obviously a lot more experienced consuming media than I was, and I didn't even notice that at all. So they did a good job, I think, of kind of, for me, tricking me into being fascinated by this thing and not putting two and two together. And so, yeah, anyway, it's something that it's a muscle that you're gonna develop when it comes to foreshadowing. But the first times you do it, you're gonna screw it up and you're gonna give away, because you're like, oh, I thought I needed to go to, I thought 30% was enough, but actually you need to go to like 7%, and that'll be enough. How's the Kingdoms of Warfare playtest going? It's going really good. I'm pretty happy with where it is right now. We have a small group of we have a strike team of alpha testers, and they have been given 53 pages of rules and adventure to try out. And the current the current playtest packet focuses on, does running a domain work? Do these stats work? Do these defenses work? Do these skills work? Can you interact? Can a good guy domain and a bad guy domain work, fight each other in a way that produces meaningful results? And then can we bring those results into the final battle with the boss? So that you imagine an adventure that might take, several sessions to go through. For the playtest, we skip all that, go directly to the final battle. Here is the final battle. Here are all the bad guys and their stats. Here's a map. And so the playtesters can kind of simulate playing an adventure 4 weeks worth of domain turns, making skill checks where they're trying to shore up their domain and trying to probe Lord Saxton's domain and see what they can learn. And Lord Saxton's doing the same thing. And at the end of 4 weeks, there's going to be a fight. And the question is, do we march on Lord Saxton or do we wait for Lord Saxton to march on us? And if the design is robust, then it's not obvious which you should do. If you defend, then you get the benefits of your fortifications. If you attack, then you gain the initiative and you get all sorts of crazy bonuses. And then the question of how does the power die work, which if you don't know what I'm talking about, in Kingdoms and Warfare, when you and your party found, it's called an organization if the players do it, it's called an enemy realm if the bad guys do it, 666. Thank you for the portentous chat donation, Skylar the Dungeon Nautilogist. I'll answer that question when I get to the end of this. Even if your thing has gone off the stuff, I'll try to remember. So you found, if you're a player group, an organization, and my goal is that we're gonna have lots of those, lots of different types of organizations in Kingdoms and Warfare. Currently in the outline, there's 24 listed, but there's no real reason to expect all 24 of those to survive contact with the enemy. Just because I can come up with an idea for this one domain doesn't mean it's going to prove out in the design. But 24 seems like a goodly number. Maybe we'll only have 16. That would still be a lot. And your organization an organization can be, they're not class specific, although they may seem that way. You can start a thieves guild, but there's no prerequisite regarding how many or if any thieves there need to be in your thieves guild. You could be a bunch of, warriors, fighters, and wizards and warlocks and just decide thematically, I think we're a thieves guild. Great, let's start a thieves guild organization. And it has stats. It has a diplomacy stat and diplomacy, espionage, operations, security, and lore. And it has defenses. It has infrastructure, resources, and resolve. And then it has things like hit points that we call traits, which are resources. I didn't say resources twice, did I? Communications, infrastructure, resolve. And then the things you manipulate, your like hit point type things, are your resources, which can be wealth, literal wealth, but not always. Not all organizations focus on gaining wealth, or morale. And some of these are related, and as your resources go up or down, your morale goes up or down, your domain gets more or less powerful. And then you have what's called the party sheet, which the playtesters have actually mocked up a copy of. I'm going to talk to Jason, our art director, about getting a really nice, maybe not final, but really nice. Don't let me forget about new art from Grace today. FYI, BT dubs, ASAP. But your domain actually grants everybody who is an officer in it, all the people that created it, all the people in your party, access to these new abilities called domain powers. And these are for combat, usually for combat. 99 times out of 100, they're combat related. And your character has what's called a power die. And it just sits there doing nothing and has no purpose or value until you roll initiative, and then everyone has the opportunity, if they want to react to that. And we'll have to, the current wording actually accepts it out from the, it bounces itself out of this loop of surprise. So it'll work even if you have surprise, but that's kind of kludgy. We'll probably come up with a better way to do it. It may not exactly be tied to initiative. We'll see. I initially had it that anybody who rolls a power die creates a cascade effect and allows everybody else to do it for free. We'll see. That might be a better way of doing it. But what happens is during battle, typically, because this ability only recharges if you go back to your home base and spend a week resting and training. So you're probably only going to use this once per adventure. That's the goal. That's the design. These powers. When it comes time to fight the final battle against the boss monster, you take your power die, which depending on how big your organization is, and it levels up over time and gets larger. It could be a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10. I think the D12 is as big as it gets. You take your power die and then you roll it and take the result and put it in the pool with all the other power dice from all the other officers. And the players have their own pool, and the bad guys have their own pool. And the abilities, your powers on your party sheet, allow any of the officers in your group to grab one or some or all, depending on the power, of the dice and gain some effect based on the result. So maybe I rolled a 1, which is not great, right? It's as bad as it gets. But on my turn, maybe you rolled a 6 and I'm next, and I need that 6. Well, we're gonna have maybe a little bit of a conversation. Now we have to kind of like actually work together and communicate. We may not want to. This may be the first time in our D&D history that we've actually had to work together, like really work together and agree on stuff. Or we'll get angry at each other and people will be like, I can't believe you took the 6 out of that. You didn't need the 6. This only gives you a bonus to hit and damage, and you're already at +8. You were gonna hit anyway. Why didn't you take the 2? And like, well, I need the 6, and that's going to happen, and this should happen in scenarios where now we're not just a party of grabastic pieces of amphibian poo. We are actually the officers in an organization. But these abilities because they only happen once per adventure, right? They can be game changing. They're designed to be game changing because A, they don't happen that often. B, the bad guys, depending on their enemy realm, like Lord Saxton, the bad guy in the test, he runs what's called a despotic warlord realm, and it's got its own unique abilities that doesn't have anything in common with any of the PC domains. And you can imagine like gnolls and orcs and goblins and stuff all getting, or sorcerers or cultists or a lich or a vampire all getting their own unique domains that have their own abilities. So they have to be game changing because the bad guys' abilities are game changing, and they're going to dramatically escalate the power level of the final battle of the game, and also I think make it more dramatic. These abilities they're super flavorful, like the Thieves Guild ability. One of them, there's a couple of them. Most domains I think have 2 abilities. One of the Thieves Guild abilities is you can take a power die out of the pool and multiply it by 5 and get that many feet of movement that doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. Very simple ability, easy to write, easy to design, not that game changing. There's only a certain number of dice in there, for instance. It's not permanent. But now, whatever your class is, now for a little while in this final battle, you can all move into position like a team of trained thieves. And that is super cool. And so far, all of that seems to be working? ? We are currently still, all our testers right now are people that have been in these live streams normally on Twitch and have seen me actually writing this document or going over the document saying, here's what work I got done this week. Here's what work I got done this week. And so I've explained this system several times. So they're already super educated on it. And I think that biases them toward having a positive outcome. Lars is working on we got hundreds of people applying to Playtest, and finding good testers is tricky. And so Lars has, I think, narrowed it down to, 30 or something like that, people that he's going to slowly be contacting and bringing in. And those people are the next big test. And so I'm going to be spending this weekend probably revising the playtest packet based on the 3 or 4 playtests we've had so far and the feedback I've gotten, which most of it is, hey, can we do this? It seems like we'd be able to do this. Can we do that? I mean, going, yeah, let me see if I can go write that down and explaining, like, one of the big questions we got is, how does adventuring work with this? And I think that the reason that question's coming up is because the playtest is so it's so hyper focused on the 4 weeks leading up to the final battle with Lord Saxton, and literally just the battle with Lord Saxton. If you were seeing the whole adventure, it would be a lot clearer. You're going to be adventuring. You're going to be playing Red Hand of Doom, or you're going to be playing Keep on the Shadowfell, or you're going to be playing, whatever the adventure you would normally be playing is, and you're going to come into conflict with some boss at the end of it 99 times out of 100. And while you're adventuring, you're going to be sending orders back to your domain for your lieutenant. And so you're going to be, that's the goal, is you're going to have 2 levels of play. You're going to be adventuring while your domain is getting ready for this big final battle. We need to raise armies. We need to figure out what our enemy is doing. We need to figure out what our enemy's forces are. And in fact, one of the things you can do during the domain turn, which is a week before the final battle, while you're adventuring, is you can have your lieutenant say, hey, can you figure out, like, what are Lord Saxton's abilities? Like, what is his character sheet? What are his domain abilities? Because I know what our domain abilities are, and they're crazy. So it'd be really nice to see what about his units? Actually, if we know what the makeup of his army is, we could actually have our domain, while we're adventuring, have our domain back home, raising units on purpose to try to. So hopefully, he said, having not looked at chat now in like 6 days, hopefully that makes sense. Cadzooks, I cherish my ignorance on the subject. So, hello, Jerome. I witness you, Jerome Lloyd. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Normally in a Twitch stream, when I say, does that make sense? People either go, yes, 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 or they go, nope, you lost me. But it seems like people want to talk about lots of other shit. But that's what we're here for. Thank you, Patches. Actually, the mods did a pretty good job of archiving that question for me. What was a helpful resource for me as I built up my channel? What was a helpful resource for me as I built up my channel? Well, I watched a lot of. I think the best advice I can give you is enjoy watching YouTubers. Find YouTubers who inspire you and watch them and consume their content natively, not as an exercise. And then pay attention to what they do, and pay attention to how their lighting and how they edit, and try to figure out, do they use a script or not? Or are they just improvising? And then make sure, like, the advice I see everywhere, which I'm not a huge fan of, is that just use whatever technology you got. Just get started. Use whatever mic you got. Use whatever camera you got. I disagree. If you want your YouTube channel to be successful, then I would put as much work as possible into making it look and sound good, keeping in mind that there's no guarantee that's going to work. Lots of streamers out there, lots of YouTubers have really great setups. Nobody watches. But I do think that one of the competitive advantages people, and I saw this in the comments very early on, was like, wow, your picture, this is on a much cheaper camera than this one. This is like a $400 Nikon, I think I had. They're like, wow, your thing looks great. And I'm like, yeah, because I went and got a 60 FPS camera. I record at 60 FPS, so it looks better. So that's my advice, is go watch YouTubers. Find YouTubers that you enjoy and figure out and then find a subject so there wasn't like some website I went to that said, here's how to do this. Nope. There wasn't any. The YouTubers I followed weren't making YouTube videos about YouTube. It was John and Hank Green had a huge, John and Hank Green and Marcus Brownlee were the ones that influenced me and made me think, I can do this. Those guys can do this. I can do this. Most of my design house rules seem additive. Yeah. Are there any non-variant rules I would consider either replacing or ignoring entirely? I don't know, Josh. Are there any non-variant rules I would consider either replacing or ignoring entirely? No, not really. No, there isn't anything. I guess there are, like, we have a psionics system. That's not core, though, which I would very, very, very badly like to revise and make a really robust alternative magic system. But that would be a lot of work, and it's not really on my plate right now. I'm not incredibly happy with the psionics system the psionic system in Strongholds and Followers is pointing in a direction, but I don't think it's crossed the finish line. Let me put it that way. But that's not core. So are there any core rules that I would consider revising, throwing out, and replacing? No. I mean, I'm happy with 5th edition. Am I still working on the fighter book? Yeah. Any advice on creating puzzles? I don't, Al, I don't know. No, I don't really. Either I'm inspired because of a scenario in an adventure, because, like, in this place and this time, here's what makes sense. I think you almost literally got to watch me invent the puzzle for the Delian Tomb live in that video. I hadn't put a lot of thought into it. I just went, well, what would the Delian Order want? What would be a cool puzzle? And it made it seem like maybe I know more about puzzles than I do, but I don't. I have a lot of books that I use, like the Book of Challenges and stuff like that, or I steal puzzles from other adventures. Somebody said that psionics in Strongholds and Followers is weird with a capital W. That's what I want. I want it to be weird. Psionics, I think psionics in fantasy should absolutely be like, what is this? That's not the issue. The issue I have is that it's not incredibly well balanced. How much time a day do I spend reading? About 2 hours, I would say. Would I ever run a sci-fi D&D game? No. I go to D&D for various flavors of fantasy. If I wanted to run sci-fi, I would run a sci-fi game. Oh, that's right. Gabrielle wants to see the new art from Grace. Any chance of a psionics-based organization in Kingdoms of Warfare? Well, there isn't not that I can think of. No. If psionics were core to 5th edition, then yes. Any new development on the Illrigger? Javier or Xavier Hickson No, I think the Illrigger is basically done. I'm sure we'll get another revision once we make an Illrigger video. Hey everybody, Matt Colville here, YouTube video, Illrigger. Let me tell you how this thing works. Then a whole bunch more people are going to play it, and some issues that playtesters have already identified, but that I looked at and went, I don't know if that's really a problem, will suddenly become obviously a problem. Okay, well then let's come up with a solution for it. And Lars and I already have our eye on a couple of those. And some things that I didn't think were a problem will prove to be a problem. So when we do a YouTube video, now literally everybody has access to it. And 60,000 people are watching that video. There'll definitely be a revision after that. But the thing we're waiting for right now is art, because we want to, before we do that video, we want to present it. It's going to be a free download. We want to make it look like a finished product. And I think we're going to start getting movement on that pretty soon. Thanks to now having 2 full-time artists. Two full-time artists. So let's see. Jeff Cochran, thank you for the 2 bones. The bones tell me nothing. Let's see. What do we got here? What do we got here to look at? You guys already saw the angel card, right? Let's see. Nert. Where would we be without Nert? Here we go. So keep in mind that I don't have permission to share this, but it's my company. I can do what I want. And this is one of those things I'm probably just going to keep doing until somebody yells at me. So first of all, we have to transmute ourselves through a couple different dimensions and see what happens when we do. Nobody freak out. Oh, look at that. And I didn't even have to do the thing. So this is your and also sort of mine. First look at Tristan Vaslor, the guy for whom one of the major regions of my world is named after. And this isn't final. This is by no means done. And that's one of the reasons that Jason, my friend and art director, would probably yell at me, because he would be like, Matt, don't show people stuff that's not done, because some of them might notice all the stuff that we want to change. But I think it looks really cool. This is done by Grace Chung, who just joined us this month. And this is what's called a turnaround. So we can see him. Look at that. It's amazing sometimes in 3D when you're actually dealing with a 3D thing, how like this pose seems a lot more kind of almost thoughtful, but then you go over here and it almost looks like a different pose, right? Because you're looking at it, his head looks like he's looking at you straight over here, but it's crazy how 3D, but over here it looks like he's kind of looking down to the perspective. How does it work? Anyway, so you can see here's his can you see this? Yeah, here's his open rib cage and stuff, and his rune sword. I'm pretty happy with this. So Dolph Boy 2, he's a Death Knight. He's like the king of the Death Knights. So that makes me pretty happy. Can 3D printers do that? I have no idea. We're not 3D printing these. High quality resin models can do almost anything. In fact, it's the best detailed miniatures are high quality resin, which is what we use. What's Kingdoms of Warfare's flexibility for different technology levels? I would say 0. I would say it's about as flexible as D&D is, which to my way of thinking is not very flexible. Is he the head of the Death Knight FBI? No, he does not work. He's like a demigod, basically. He serves at the right hand of Korsakef the Infinite, which is Korsakef the Infinite is probably CR20, so this guy's probably like CR17. Have I played 4E on any? Yeah, I played 4E for a couple of years on Fantasy Grounds. It was great. So yeah. What's the difference with 3D printer? They're 2 completely different technologies. It's like asking, can you write this with a pen versus can you print this on your printer? Sometimes yes, sometimes. Let's go back to me. Me. Did you hear what he said, Sotero? To me. Any tips for keeping engagement through voice chat? No. I have no idea. Do the normal things you would do. So that's, Jeffrey, this is the first time we've caught you, so we're even. You're a lot calmer here than my YouTube videos. Am I? What is the unit of measurement of calmness? How's the heist coming? That's a great question. Do TTRPGs assume a great man theory of history? I guess it would depend on if you were playing the Great Man RPG, then I would guess yes. If you're playing like Traveler, no. So yeah, that's what's this? Afternoon, Matt. Hello. Oh, look at that. Me and my friends are trying to get into Traveler. I played Traveler twice over the course of 30 years, and so I can't really, I know a little bit about it, but I have not run it or played it in recent memory, so I can't recommend any of it, except that I know that there are some editions people like more than others. I know people still have a lot of affection for those original black booklets, which I think you can get print on demand now. But otherwise, I would just try to figure out what it is you want from a sci-fi RPG. And don't assume Traveler does it, but then just try to figure out, there are lots of forums and support for Traveler. Traveler is kind of the classic, it's not the first. I think Metamorphosis Alpha was the first sci-fi RPG, but Traveler is kind of what they did after that. And try to figure out, is Traveler going to do it? Because just because Traveler is kind of famous and has been around for a long time doesn't mean that it's the right RPG for you. It might be. About 47 pandas. I doubt it. That doesn't seem like it's. I've got so much stuff to do that I've already promised people. Any progress on the Chain Heist? Yeah, actually, I finished. So my goal right now with the Chain Heist is to, as you know, we paused the chain actually now for quite a while, and it's probably going to be between when we paused it and when we go back to playing again. I'm sure it will be over a year, because now we're in lockdown and there's no guarantee that that even all of us will survive, like literally, right? COVID-19, especially for people like me, the mortality rate if you get infected is somewhere between 13 and 18%. So I want you to imagine that for a second. Imagine if just going outside and hanging out with your friends meant there was a 15% chance that you were going to die. So I'd like to avoid that. And so we're not going to be getting together in person anytime soon. And it's not clear to me that getting together online is something that would be engaging enough for me to consider doing it for the chain, because the chain is kind of one of our premier products. Maybe for something else, getting online and playing would be fun. But it is I said I was going to do it. And so, even I'm not even 100% sure that our gaming group is going to survive lockdown. I've definitely seen gaming groups of mine fall apart and just stop getting together for way, way less crazy and severe reasons than this. But I said I was going to do it, so we're going to do it. I'm still working on the heist, and the goal is to take Castle Valletta, which doesn't exist, and not only design it, but design it in a really encounter-rich way, so that we can put the map in front of the players, and they can look at the map. And I'm imagining the first session is going to be literally hours probably of planning, of taking all the information they get from Angel and from their spy organization, which isn't going to be perfect. They're not going to have perfect knowledge. Their map is going to be missing some bits, and there may be some things on the map that are wrong. And they're going to plan, how are we going to get in here? How are we going to find the key to Ringwell? And how are we going to get out? And that means we need to know, since we're actually doing it for real, right? It's not a skill challenge. It's not something where we're just going to roll a couple of like they're just going to have like a flow chart of a couple of encounters. They're actually going to have to crawl through this dungeon and go corridor by corridor trying to find. We know it's going to be in one of these places, probably. We don't know exactly which. It's not that it could be anywhere. No, we don't have to search every room. It's in one of these places. We've narrowed it down. Our intelligence has narrowed it down to one of these couple places. And then we got to get out without anybody finding us. And that's going to be a lot of work. It's probably on the order of 36 different encounters, because I don't know how they're going to get in. They're not going to, finding the key to Ringwell and getting out is definitely not going to be 36 encounters. But I don't want to make it, there's only one way in and there's only one way out. No. I want to be as surprised. I want you to be able to run this adventure many different times, and every time you do it, it's wildly different, right? Because this time the players had access to fog cloud, and so one of them got in through a crack in the masonry, and now they're in this room. And that's the first time I've run this adventure and somebody's made it in through that way, or they went in through the sewers, or they went in through a chimney, or they bluffed their way in, because there are still living people that deal with Castle Valletta. And that's going to be a lot of work, actually, and it's not. And I've got a lot of stuff to do. I've got Kingdoms and Warfare I've got to keep working on. There's other things in the pike that I'd like to spend some time on, making videos, for instance. And so what I've done last week is I've started working on Castle Valletta as a product outline that I can assign to writers. And that's tricky because I've never done a project like this before, because my art director, Jason, wants to build the castle in 3D. He wants to not hey, adventure designer, go design a 2D, grid graph paper map. No, Jason wants to invent the Castle Valletta's castle in like Maya or ZBrush or whatever he uses for his 3D program, and then be able to kind of rotate it and zoom in and take top-down pictures of it that will look like really highly detailed, pretty 2D maps, or also at the same time have an isometric view to make it easier for the dungeon master to understand, or even just be able to say, hey, go to this website and you can scrub through the actual 3D file and zoom in so you can get a really good understanding of the layout of this place. And that's really exciting to me as a creator, is the opportunity to have this be not designed exclusively by writers, but some writers working on encounter design, and a level designer. Jason is an experienced level designer on famous video games, and having a level designer building the castle. So it's going to be collaborative. And so the designers are going to be working on encounters, but they're not going to know when they're working on it exactly what the layout of these rooms is. They don't need to. I've already designed some of these encounters. I already said, okay, there's the library, and here are the things that are going to happen in the library. And they're already at a state, well, some of these encounters are already at a state where I could run it as a dungeon master, not at a state where I could put it in front of strangers as a product. But that's going to be how we do this. It's going to be, let's design out the church inside Castle Valletta, because they have their own church, they have their own wizards organization, and each of these are a building that have multiple levels and rooms inside and stuff like that. And that all excites me. But it's tricky. What I did was I wrote, while I'm working on the outline for it, I wrote like a pitch. Here's how we're going to do this. Here's what Castle Valletta is and how it's going to work and how we're going to develop it. Phase 1, the writers write a manuscript, and that's going to have it's going to have all the encounters in it, or most of them. It's going to have all the encounters in it. We're going to say, here's the Wizard's Tower. Here's what goes on there. Here's what its theme is. Here's who these wizards were, the Wizard's Order. And here's what's in level 1. Level 1 is the library, and here's the stuff that's going to happen in the library. Level 2 is the summoning room, and here's the stuff that's going on in the summoning room. That could be a whole level. It could be one room. It could be a bunch of rooms. The designer doesn't know, but the designer knows here are the encounters that are going to be in here, right? There's something loose in the summoning room that got from the last time they used this place, that kind of thing. Then when that manuscript is done, which is going to have, I would say, 80 to 90% of the encounters in it, Jason's going to read it and go, oh, there's a library, huh? And he's going to design it out, and it's going to be up to him to decide, how do we get in here? How many doors are there? Where are the windows? Are there other rooms in here? What does it mean to be a library? Is it one room or a lot of rooms? And then he's going to design out the castle based on that manuscript. And then we're going to take the writers are going to take that castle and go, oh, is there a door here? Oh, well, it'd be cool if there were a trap here, right? So that's what I mean when I say it's going to be collaborative. And that's super exciting, but I've never done a project like that before, so it's going to be kind of tricky. So I don't know how that sounds to you folks. But that's what the heist is. And I'm going to have a call maybe today. If not today, then probably next week. And with one of the writers and say, hey, do you want to, and it might be something where I step back and someone else. So will this be purchasable? Yeah, I don't know if it'll be its own thing. It'll probably be its own thing and be included in we'll probably say, here's the Player's Guide to Capital, here's Castle Valletta, the adventure, and here's both. Hey, it's Pete. Hey, Pete. I miss you, Pete. I assume it's Pete. I could be wrong. How many people are named Cosmo Reverb? How much detail do I usually go in for world building? I enjoy doing world building. I enjoy, like Phil does way more world building than I do. But we do it for the same reason, because we need to believe in this world. I need a certain level of detail that convinces me this is a real place. And it's that conviction that I put in front of the players, not the details. The details are nice to have in my back pocket and be able to pull out whenever I need to, but it's that core belief that this is real. So every dungeon master has that dial set differently. Like, how much detail do I need to really believe that this is a real place? Hopefully that makes sense. When is the Guide to Capital happening? I don't know. It's a good question. Would I like to see prestige classes added to 5th edition? It depends on what you mean. At like from Wizards of the Coast, something core? No, I don't think. I think that would be sort of. I would like to see. I like the idea of prestige classes. They weren't without problems, but I also disagreed with some of the core design of them. So my attitude is, you probably wouldn't have had those problems if your core design had been different. But those guys, all the guys that worked on 3rd edition were really smart, and I wasn't privy to any of their conversations, with one or two exceptions. I think my HelloFresh just got here. So I'm not. I would like to see. I can imagine a. I can imagine a RPG, an RPG, a RPG. I can imagine an RPG that is based on the 5th edition assumptions of it, you roll a d20 and higher is better, and you have these stats and they have these, or you have some stats that wouldn't necessarily. You could make a game built on the kind of core rules of Dungeons and Dragons that didn't have strength, dexterity, intelligence, have different stats, for instance, but worked the same way. By worked the same way, I don't mean meant the same things. I mean there's a 3 to 18 stat that produces a bonus of -4 to +4, that kind of thing. Had defense ratings and things like hit points that use that had classes and prestige classes. I could imagine that. Well, Cosmo, it's a cool name. It is a cool name. Hey, it's How to Drink. There's a big crossover between the MCDM community and the How to Drink community. Huge fan of yours. I'm betting this has been asked before. Do I have any thoughts on running lower magic games? Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on, like, there was a whole style of play back in the early 2000s called the E6, where the game you stopped leveling up at 6th level, and that was it. And that came from a couple reasons. One of which was people thought that this is true. Every edition of Dungeons and Dragons has, 90% of the game design happens in the first 6 levels, right? Because how many games get past that? That's fair. So just stop there. A lot of people thought the game started to kind of go crazy after that. But also it's a much more low magic thing. I think, like, you would probably have to restrict the classes in a really low magic game. I've seen this question asked a lot recently. I sort of assume, isn't there a Mediterranean Greek setting book adventure coming out? I would have assumed, I don't know anything about it. I don't even remember the name of it. It's got a T in there and an E and an R and an O and an N. And an A and an S? Theranos? Wasn't that company? Wasn't that fake company that made billions of dollars? It stole billions of dollars. I would have assumed that if you were going to do a historical, mythological, Greek, Mediterranean adventure setting book for D&D, that it would be low magic. If it's not, then I probably think that's a missed opportunity. But you would have to, there's classes like sorcerers and warlocks that get access to all sorts of crazy stuff that you would presumably not have in a low magic game. Wizards seem a little bit more straightforward to me because you can restrict how many spells a wizard knows. You can restrict how many spells there are in the world. You could run a game where just finding a new spell was a big deal, which it used to be. And also there's a subtle difference between low magic and low useful magic. It used to be you found spell books from wizards and they would have spells in them and you're like, great, rope trick. What am I going to do with that? And so having options, having many options can still simulate low magic if those options aren't super, super useful. And I quite like running D&D in scenarios where magic items are random, access to spells is semi-random, because then it forces players to start thinking outside the box. Other than that, no. That's just my first blush reaction is I would probably have to restrict access to classes. Daunting to prepare Curse of Strahd for so many locations, NPCs, PC choices. How do I manage all this and keep the game moving, Corey? I don't know. I don't believe in the core premise of a lot of published adventures, which is you have to read this entire thing before you start running it. I prefer adventures where the chapter I'm in explains to me what's going to happen so that I don't need to know. So that if there's a reference here to something that happens 6 chapters later, it tells me that here. Oh, by the way, this is one of the lieutenants of the bad guy. Oh, okay. Is it? Thank you. I sort of expect that I would have to read the last 10% of the adventure to understand, which a good writer designer will put at the beginning. Here's who the bad guy is. Here's what they want. Here's the plot. Here's what's going to happen on a chapter by chapter basis. Great. I get it. What is that? A page that I just read? Now let's get started. That should be it. I shouldn't need to know what's in chapter 8 when I'm here in chapter 1. So if you see that advice, don't agree with it. I don't think I've ever, the players haven't read the adventure, so they don't know. If you get something wrong or you miss something, you screw up, they're not going to know. So I think that you may have fallen victim to listening to the authors who believe that in order for you to understand their brilliance, this happens to a lot of writers, not just adventure writers, in order for you to understand how brilliant this adventure is, you need to read the entire thing to truly appreciate it. And you have to do it all, and you have to have it basically committed to memory before you start running it. No, that's not true. Anyway. Corey Hollenbach asks, do I think 5th edition will ever go back to smaller, fast adventures? No. Like, if you want those, there's more adventures on the DM's Guild, and I would probably guess more high-quality adventures on the DM's Guild than you could ever play if you played every week from now until you died. So that's what the OGL is for. It's to make it so that companies like us can produce the content that they don't, adventures don't typically sell well. That's why they do one adventure a year, and it's typically a adventure plus a source book, because that way more people are going to buy it. Carlos, no, every time we do a, I think the MCDM, the question is, does this stream being here on YouTube have anything to do with politics? Nope. Every time we do a running the game video, I want to do a YouTube stream that Friday. Just because the audience, the MCDM community is mostly a YouTube community, and some of them resent the fact that we stream mostly on Twitch. And some of the ones that don't resent it, the reason they don't resent it is because they don't know that we're streaming on Twitch. And if they did, they would resent it. So I want to make sure that the YouTube community gets some love. I love almost all your videos. Well, that means you probably love more of them than I do. But I miss the old cadence of running the game the most. Ah, yes, the good old days when I didn't know what I was doing, and I would take 10 minutes of content and pack it into 40 minutes. What could be better? Do I have plans to start putting out weekly videos again? No, I don't like putting out bad videos. That's something I'd like to avoid doing. I would like to put out good videos, and that means taking time. First of all, it means that I'm only saying something if I think it's worth talking about. If you are one of those people who's like, I don't care what Matt's talking about, I just want to hang out with him and spend more time doing this stuff. Well, YouTube is big, and there are a lot of people out there, some of whom you're going to like. To satiate that need, to slake that thirst. So first of all, I have to believe that I have something to talk about, and that doesn't happen every day. And then I have to write a script for it and do the presentation, and that, because otherwise the signal to noise ratio, especially in a lot of those, the first 5 videos, I basically had a script. I just didn't have a teleprompter, so it took a long time to edit. And then after that, I would do a lot of kind of free form, me direct to camera just talking about a subject, but the signal to noise ratio in those videos is terrible. They're super repetitive, which doesn't help anybody. That's not good. Those are not good videos. So no, you're almost certainly never going to see that rate, that like a whole bunch of really low quality videos. That is something that if I could go back in time and undo that, I would. But I learned a lot. It took a lot of work and learning to get where I am. Ah, yes, explaining the same thing in different ways can help convey your meaning, but explaining the same thing the same way over and over again when you didn't mean to. It's not even repetition for emphasis. It's repetition because you're bad at what you do. I was just not a good YouTuber yet, so I would literally just say the same thing over and over again. And people called me out on that all the time. So yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that. Sorry. Robert Burton, thank you very much. Your friends, hopefully, they're going to get a huge kick out of you running for them, and some of them will turn into Dungeon Masters, and they will run for you. This music sounds awesome, Callahan. Thank you very much for the support. Where did I find it? This is State Azure. His YouTube channel is, you can probably get a link to it, or just search for State Azure on YouTube, and the guy makes a ton of content. Every week he's making more streams. Some of them are just him noodling around, and he's a synth nerd and a modular enthusiast, as am I, but that guy's actually a musician, unlike me. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Any plans, any tips on incorporating? Well, I mean, you could, RuneWave, thank you for the support. RuneWave, there's nothing stopping you from adding to the Core to Wall Flash. Just do it. If you've got a cool idea for another, and it sounds like you do, just do it. You don't need, it sounds like you don't need any advice. You already got it all figured out. Any advice for an amateur designer struggling with scope or design creep? Well, I mean, you can't start a race by crossing the finish line. So I would say focus, Alex. First of all, thank you for the support, Alex. I would say focus on your design goals and achieving those goals, And once you've crossed the finish line, then go back and say, I could have done this and I could have done that. Scope creep and design creep. I mean, it's if you're an amateur just doing it for yourself, what even does that mean, right? How do you even know what the scope of your project is if you're just starting out and you've never done this before? There's going to be a huge process of discovery, I would imagine. Mac Daddy. I've mentioned my career over the years, yes, and the path back to fantasy authorship in TTRPG seems interesting. I actually don't know what that means. The path back to fantasy authorship. I don't know what that means. I apologize for not being able to correctly decode your question. My third level party currently has the Eye of Vecna, but they don't know yet. Well, that sounds great. I love like you know, when I was at Turtle Rock and even at Pandemic, I would run for a group and we might play for 4 months and get from 1st to 5th or 6th level and then stop, and I would play with different people. That would be it. That was the campaign. We played 3 adventures and that was it. We're not on the hook to play forever for the rest of our lives. And then it would be, hey, here's some cool magic items that are probably beyond the scope of what you're used to dealing with. And it never really backfired. That only ever backfired if we then kept playing, which we saw at Turtle Rock Studios, where they wanted to keep playing, and I'm like, this is going to be kind of thorny. So yeah, if you've given them the Eye of Vecna and they don't know it, then did you really give them the Eye of Vecna? Any tips on how to get started as a game designer? Yeah, just start doing it. Don't wait for permission. No one's going to give you permission, and no one's going to pay you to do it if you don't have something to show for your time and effort. So it's being a game designer is a lot like being a writer. We don't do it because we're permitted. We do it because we are compelled. And so there's never been a better time in history to start making games. There's so many free tools online that would allow you to make high quality games. And I assume there are mod communities out there. There are some games I've seen that have quite robust mod communities that you can jump into and join. That's video games. And the same thing's true of pen and paper. Write something, be very critical of it. Put it up on the DMs Guild, try to attract attention to it. If you're starting off and you're by yourself, you're literally just like doing this on your own, then no one's going to pay attention to anything you do, because why should they? Why would they? How would they even know you exist? So something that writers don't like, but appears to be true, is that the act of doing this thing is also the act of promoting yourself. Would anybody have any idea who I was if not for the YouTube channel? No, not really, no. Right? And the YouTube channel is me going direct to camera. So I have a lot of writer friends and designer friends who hate that. They either are trying to build an audience kind of without promoting themselves, or they just work for somebody else and lament the fact that they can't do it full time on their own. And it's largely because they don't like or don't want to promote themselves. And neither did I. I hate promoting myself. I spent 20 years trying to kind of develop an audience and a fan base without ever even people knowing my name would be nice. And I had a blog and I had a podcast, and none of those were as successful as the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel was kind of me going, fine. Ugh. Peyton King, thank you for the support. I appreciate it. Spencer Whipple. Nice surprise after a rough day. Spencer, I feel like all days are rough days now. Things seem to be going well over at MCDM. I can't complain. We're all alive. Any advice on finding a good niche or identifying unfilled demand for a kind of story, game, or general product? Alexander, I wouldn't worry about that at all. I would worry about finding something that you're passionate about. Morgoth, Doomkin, thank you for the support. If you sit there trying to figure out, first of all, don't try to second guess what the audience wants. I didn't do Kingdoms and Warfare or Strongholds and Followers because I thought the audience wanted it. It was something that I believed it was something I was passionate about and believed in. It's a style of play I've participated many times over the years, and I felt like I had something to contribute based on that. That's it. And if there's an audience for it, great. Whatever you're passionate about, interested in, is going to do better than any attempt on your part to identify an unfilled need. There's that great quote from Henry Ford. If I asked the people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So if you're passionate about it, then in fact, I just had this conversation with Jason yesterday. Jason's my art director, where I said, I'm working on the heist, and I just want him to sanity check something for me. I'm working on the heist, but it's not clear to me what the future holds here. Are we ever going to get together again as the Chain of Akron? I don't know. So far, literally only Matt O'Driscoll has said anything in the past 2 months about wanting to play. Only he has ever said, hey, tap, tap, tap. Hey, can we play D&D? And he doesn't care what it is. He would love to go back to the Chain, but he doesn't care what it is. So I don't know what the future holds. Is this the best use of my time, is working on the heist? Or should we be working, if I'm not, like the process of doing Kingdoms and Warfare is a process of me doing a lot of writing and design, and then getting it to a certain point the playtesters can test it, and then handing it off to the playtesters and basically sitting and waiting for them to test it. And during that time, I can be working on something else. What should it be? And there are lots of products that we could be working on. And Jason's response was, well, some of the things he and I talked about, he was like, that would be more exciting for me to work on, me being Jason in this instance. He goes, but I want to tell you that you should be working on whatever we do best when you are passionate about what you're working on. And that's true of everybody. Once you get to the point where you've established a brand and you're a company, then you can start looking around and saying, what isn't anybody doing that I'm excited by? I'm really excited by this and no one seems to be doing it. I'm excited by these 3 things, but this has been done a million times. And I don't know if this would be successful anymore, but this, I'm really interested in this and no one's doing this right now. Let's do this. But that only comes once anyway. What do I think about XP being ordered by difficulty instead of individual creature XP? What's the difference? Don't difficult creatures give you more XP? Thank you for the support, by the way, Gabrielle. I try to look at a person's name, and if it ends in Vargas, I'm guessing that it's Gabrielle, not Gabriel. And so far, I think my record on that's been pretty good. I always use deadly encounters, Gabrielle. I almost always dial up encounter difficulty. Because the players, there's more of them than there are of me, and they will outsmart me. So yeah, I mean, Gabrielle, just award, there's a million different ways to award. I guess we could probably do a video on awarding experience. That's something people used to ask me about a lot back when there was a flood of people getting into D&D for the first time and our channel was getting a lot of juice. There's always new people getting into it, so we're always attracting new people. But people were like, how do you award XP? And I was like, that doesn't make, that's like saying, what are the letters of the alphabet? And can you put them in order for me? What do you mean, how do you do it? You say, hey, congratulations. You achieved something. Here's some XP. But I think what people mean is maybe the timing, but I've played in games where you got XP after every encounter. And I that's some of the most fun I've ever had playing. Not because of that, but maybe in some part because of that. Like after every encounter, you got XP. I played in very ruthless XP focused games where if you weren't I played in like basically old school like League of Legends where whoever killed the thing got the XP for it. And I didn't not enjoy playing. I enjoyed playing in those games. But some of that design was kind of creaky, and maybe things are better now. Like that era, I was young back then, so we took this stuff really seriously. And the idea of someone missing a session and therefore being behind in XP made sense to all of us. None of us questioned it. It made sense to all of us. And it coincided with an era where everyone I knew was way more engaged with the reality of the game and the stakes of play than any of us have been since we went to basically everybody always has the same amount of XP. Why is that? Is it related to the way we treated experience points and treasure and rewards in general? Was it that since we were taking rewards so seriously that we took the game seriously? Or was it just because we were young and we didn't know any better and we took everything seriously, everything, everything louder than everything else, and now we're older and it's harder just because we're older. It's harder to take stuff super, super, super seriously, fictional stuff. I don't know, but maybe we'll do a video on awarding XP. That would be going, I think, back to like D&D 101, but that's not a bad thing. Phoenix Maggior says, I don't know how to pronounce Phoenix's last name, says that they love me and never stopped doing, well, I love you, Phoenix, and I never stop. Thank you for the support. I wasn't going to say, but thank you for hanging out. Even those of you, even if you're watching video on demand, you are still part of you're still part of the community. You're still supporting the channel. Even if you're there in chat and you never say anything, you just listen to this bearded idiot ramble on for hours and hours. You're still part of the community. You're still supporting the channel. With the renewal of tabletop, mainly 5e, how do we combine the popular support for these systems that don't get as much love? Well, I don't know. I'm not a huge, the grantor, I don't, the one-on-one video was interesting because, first of all, thank you for the support, the grantor. The one-on-one video was really interesting because there were some people, I wouldn't say this was maybe 5 or 10% of the people were saying, well, D&D is not really good for one-on-one play. You should choose a different system. And that is very bad advice because it is predicated on the idea, the assumption that the person watching the video, for instance, doesn't really want to play D&D. You don't really want to play D&D, do you? Come on. But I sort of assume they do. I sort of assume that somebody who wants to play D&D one-on-one is someone who wants to play D&D. And so going to them and saying is super patronizing, and it imagines that they don't want to play D&D, but I think probably they do. So for me, I don't think that the system you choose is particularly virtuous. I don't think that playing D&D makes you a good person, a morally good person. And similarly, I don't think not playing D&D makes you a moral or good person. If Numenera, for instance, which looks super cool, which I would love to play, I bought all the stuff for it, but I've never had a chance to play it. I don't know anyone who wants to run it for me. And I don't want my first experience of it to be me dungeon mastering it. That's a very top-down. I'd rather have a bottom-up experience of Numenera. But I don't think it's virtuous. I don't think that somehow I'm a better person because I chose this other system. So I'm not here trying to ring the bell of you should be playing other games. No. I think if they have merit and they have good design and people are curious, they will find their way there. Like Fall of Delta Green. Like if you start looking around for other games, you're going to find Fall of Delta Green. And for some people, they're going to be like, that looks amazing. So I think people like me and Matt Mercer, Matt I think probably has done more on this than I have, but I haven't done nothing, can promote other systems and just let people know they're out there. That's just the goal, is let people know they're out there. Switching and trying something else just for the sake of trying something else, I think is probably going to get you in trouble, just because your players are going to be like, what is this? It's usually dungeon masters we used to call them engineers, players who liked new systems and liked tinkering with new systems, but there are not a lot of those, and they're mostly dungeon masters. So don't be surprised if your players are like, man, I liked D&D, but it is virtuous to make sure that you are playing the right game for you and your group, and D&D is not the right game for everybody. So I'm not here to tell you don't play it. I'm not here to tell you play it. I am here to say we'll probably do a video on this at some point. And the campaign world video is on the way, because not all of the D&D campaign world videos were published by TSR. Like Empire of the Petal Throne, actually I think it was published by TSR, but not in the sense that we mean nowadays. It wasn't written by TSR. So starting to talk about other game worlds is sort of getting us into the topic of talking about other systems. And that's why I ran Paranoia. I would never in a million years try to run a Paranoia game in D&D. Well, that's not true. Like Castle, the comedy version of Castle Greyhawk, which I had a lot of fun playing, that is kind of Paranoia-esque. But Paranoia is great, classic. So we ran Paranoia on our live stream, and the audience really liked it. The players had a lot of fun, although, again, only one of them ever really said, hey, can we play Paranoia again? The rest of them were like, oh, that was fun. So, yeah, I would like to talk about more systems, because I want to make sure people know that the options are out there, and that if they want to spend some time finding a system that's better suited for them, they can do that. But you don't need me for that. So, yeah. If a system doesn't get a lot of love, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it's because it's super niche, and bad. There are lots of game systems out there that I think are not robustly designed and very niche and aren't probably not ever going to build an audience. But I definitely think MCDM can do more to introduce people to the idea of other game systems. And I think a lot of people who are unhappy playing D&D are unhappy because they're playing the wrong system. They just don't know it. And it can be something that I can do is kind of say, hey, there are other games out there that you might like more. There are other games out there. You may like them more. Any recommendations for high-level play? No, I don't think I've really ever... The highest level game I've ever run was maybe 13th to 15th level. So it's not something I have a lot of experience with. It's not something I have a lot of affection for. Although I would like to do it. I would like to do it more. And it's my hope that the Chain of Acheron gets there. But there's no guarantees. What's the most pressing issue that keeps the chain from returning? Well, right now, I would say it's the imminent fear of the literal death of the players. I would say that's probably number one. I'm sort of 50-50 on whether or not I'll be around a year and a half from now. I think it's not. We'll see. Am I going to be able to make it till there's a vaccine? Before I gotta get, just because I'm going to go crazy. And what happens to MCDM if we can we go for 2 years literally without ever getting together? I don't know. So I would say number one issue is the fact that there's a global viral outbreak right now that has already claimed the lives of like 60,000 Americans, and we don't really have a plan. There isn't really any plan other than sit it out and wait for a vaccine to get from where we are to herd immunity that doesn't involve basically everybody in the population getting infected sooner or later. And the only question is, when you get infected, is there an ICU bed for you? That's it. That's all that language about flattening the curve isn't about fewer people infected. No, it's about fewer people die because we don't overload the hospitals. That's it. Keegan Sullivan, well, I love that you love strongholds and followers. Yeah, I think there's strongholds. I think somebody was asking about Kingdoms of Warfare and tech levels. I think the domain management system is going to be pretty flexible, and you could use it in lots of different systems. But the actual domain powers you get are all explicitly 5th edition. Although you could probably adapt a lot of those powers pretty easily to something like Pathfinder or Dungeon Crawl Classics. Would I be interested in doing more roundtable discussions? I'm interested in consuming them. I've already been in a couple of them, and my experience is that one of those things goes a long way. If you want to know what I think about being a dungeon master, well, I stream several times a week on Twitch. I make a YouTube video about once a month. I think the speed of those is picking up a little bit. So if you want to know what I think, the whole round, and there are other people I'd like to kind of interview the way I did Phil, although I'm more interested in interviewing other YouTubers, people that have nothing to do with D&D, but also have a YouTube channel, because I think that's a fascinating subject, how YouTube has changed their life, if indeed at all. But I would like to see roundtable D&D discussions with people that don't all share my background, for people that are getting into the hobby for the first time, people that are from different walks of life than I am. That's what fascinates me, not, hey, let's listen to a whole bunch of people that are basically the same as Matt Colville all talking around the table at the same time. A little of that goes a long way. Let me put it that way. I think Kevin Sullivan probably doesn't have a really good statistical background and is probably not an epidemiologist, so don't listen to that guy. Hey, person from a country using the Cyrillic alphabet, I love you. How soon after the release of Kingdoms of Warfare will it be converted to Fantasy Grounds? I have no idea. Taylor Lauer, yeah, I do know how the chain... well, I don't know what the canonical ending would be. I know what the canonical end battle would be, but I don't know how it would turn out. Do I have any advice for managing a party with a wide level disparity? I've done it before. That used to be the default, The idea of if we're all 5th level, you joining for the first time and being 5th level, we never played that way because you didn't earn those levels. But we also knew, I think a couple of times we played with people having to start at 1st level, because obviously if you just survive to the end of the adventure, or even the session, you'll level up because the XP disparity is so great. And having to keep alive and a person being like, I'm just getting started, and I have to be careful. You guys, I'm gonna have to hang out in the back of the party. That's not a terrible way to play D&D. That didn't happen a lot. But otherwise, I'm optimistic that you could run like a 5th edition game with some characters that were 4th level, maybe one character was 3rd level, and another character was 5th level. I think you could do that. In fact, I think it might be fun, depending on your players. Carlos, thank you for the subs. It all comes down to the group and what you're willing to put up with in terms of what's fair. I think I could, if I ran, let's imagine I ran a solo adventure for somebody in the Chain of Akron, and it lasted for 4 weeks, and could they level up, and they'll be a higher level than everybody else? I don't know. Maybe. Would the players think that was unfair? They wouldn't think it was unfair that character was 1 level higher. I don't think. They would think it was unfair that they had that opportunity to get that level. And I want a solo adventure. That's the issue. So I don't think inherently multiple levels in the same party has to be a problem. I think it can be a problem depending on how they got there. Color of Magic one shot. Isn't Color of Magic kind of an anthology? Are there better ways to streamline combat? It depends on... the thing is, everybody who complains about combat taking too long combat's taking too long for all different reasons. And I can't diagnose your group. Combat can take a long time, but some people, you can have a table where some people feel like combat took a long time and other people didn't. That's just because these people like combat and these people don't. Well, that's not something we can solve, really. If you really like that kind of Final Fantasy Tactics gameplay and somebody else doesn't, then there's not a solution that makes both those people happy. And so that has a lot to do with it. But I would suggest probably even going on our Discord and just asking in the general chat, the general advice chat, saying, hey, what advice do you folks have for speeding up combat? Because there's a million things you can do, little things, big things, and not all of them are going to work for your group because your group might not be enjoying combat or thinking it's taking too long for different reasons. So if I hit this button, says Adam Van Spankeren. That's German for the one who spanks. Adam, the one who spanks. If I hit this button, you're more likely to see my question comment. Well, I go through, yes. If you hit that button, which is the money button, I think, that puts your message way here at the top in this big yellow. And if somebody does that, I make sure to click on that and I make sure to read their question. And then if there's nothing up here, then I go and I look at chat. And I also will look at the Twitch mods who have a little channel here. They can ask me, so if some super good question comes up that I didn't see, they can post it in here. Am I likely to write any more adventures using monsters? Yes, I think so, Adam. Yes, I do. Yeah, I don't think adventures are the best use of MCDM's time, but I like them and I like working on them. And I'm really happy with the way the Strongholds and Followers adventure turned out. And I didn't have to write that. That made me happy. I wrote the outline for it and then I edited it so it reads like my writing, sort of. And James Hake, the author, kind of knew my style and was able to, and so it came out really good. And I'd like to do more stuff like that. And that's kind of where we're going with the heist. Would I stream one-on-one D&D with him? Yeah, I would. But I would have to decide, like right now, Nathaniel, thank you for the support. I'm working on the heist and I want to wrap up the heist right now. At least I want to get the adventure designed because I said I was going to do it, not because I think we're going to play again. We might play again. In fact, I might be the only person right now in the entire group who it hasn't occurred to them that we're not going to play again. Who knows? I'm just saying who knows. And like I've said, I've had gaming groups fall apart for way less severe reasons than a global viral outbreak that threatens people's lives. So once that's done and I'm like, okay, and I can go, all right, whenever we play D&D again, if it's online, which I'm not sure is the best use of continuing the chain. If it's online, if it's in person, doesn't matter. The adventure's ready. Then I can work on something else. Then I can work on prepping something else. And if I were to prep something else for online play, for like Fantasy Grounds, it probably wouldn't have to be only for O'Driscoll. I'd probably be able to rustle up some other players. Although the Venn diagram of people that want to play with me and the people I want to play with, like I know in real life and enjoy hanging out with, it's not infinite. Can I fix the links in earlier episodes of running the game? A lot of them are broken. Well, it depends. I don't know which ones are broken. So unfortunately, thank you for the support, Joshua, but I don't know which ones are broken. If one of the mods or we get emails saying, hey, this link is broken, we'll fix it. Carlos, I like old D&D modules, but in this day and age, I enjoy spending my time. Thank you for the support, Carlos. I enjoy spending my time creating things. And I'm very lucky. Not everybody in chat cares about this or feels this way, but I'm very lucky that I have now, through a combination of hard work and mostly luck, I have built an audience of people who are interested in the original stuff I create. And that is an opportunity not everybody has, and it would be kind of foolish of me to ignore. And so even though there may be a much larger group of people who would like to watch me run classic old D&D adventures, and some of those I would quite enjoy watching, I don't think I'm going to end up at the end of my life going, gosh, I wish I hadn't written so many novels. I wish I hadn't created so much original content for the games that I love that people engaged with. Whereas I probably won't remember all the adventures that I bought, pre-made, and ran. So that's where the focus is. What's a good way to put fear into experienced players? Well, the way you ask that, Aaron, thank you for the support. The way you ask that, it implies that that the thing that makes them afraid is the mechanics of combat. Because it doesn't, which you didn't say that, but that's the implication. Because does being an experienced D&D player mean that horror movies don't work on you? I bet not. I bet regardless of how much D&D you've played, if you go see a really well-made horror movie that's in your genre, because some people are freaked out by slasher movies, and some people are freaked out by serial killer movies, and some people are freaked out by science fiction, horror, body horror, stuff like that. It's still going to work on you. So that's how I try to put fear into my players, is I try to actually make them afraid. And I try to key into like what kind of stuff. Like, I had a friend of mine who, we grew up together, and he had a daughter, and all of a sudden, if there were young children in jeopardy in the D&D game, right? So you have to know, and it was to a certain extent it was exploitive, but it was never graphic. It was never anything other than kind of, I would say, almost a Saturday morning cartoon level danger and threat. But it worked on him. Didn't take a lot anymore. Didn't take a lot to work on him. So it takes knowing your players. Stay safe and buy. I don't think toilet paper is in short supply, but I appreciate it. Razcal03, you stay safe. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Without knowing who I am, Matt Harmon asks. I do know who you are. You're Matt Harmon of the New Hampshire Harmons. Which Terry Pratchett book should I read first? Well, I think there's a couple of... This is a great question. And Terry Pratchett fans think you should read them all and you should read them in order. But I bet Terry Pratchett would not have said that if he knew you. Because the first books he wrote when he was like 8. That's not true. I'm exaggerating. But very young. And they were almost a whole different genre. I would say Guards is almost a canonical starting place. It's still early Pratchett, but it's kind of late early Pratchett where he's really starting to get his themes worked out. And it's a lot of fun. Guards is a great starting point. I do think that the Moist von Lipwig books, so Going Postal is probably a really good place to start. Because at that point, he was in Going Postal and Making Money. Making Money? Yeah. I think those are the best books he ever wrote. And after that, it was sort of downhill because he had a degenerative cognitive impairment. And I felt like I could detect it after that. But those are super good places to get started. Although they don't really explain anything about the world. But I don't know that you need to have explanations are overrated. Also, I think another great place to get started, depending on your background and the kind of stuff you're interested in, is the Tiffany Aching books, We Free Men. It's some of the best stuff that dude ever wrote. Brilliant. It's brilliant. I think Terry Pratchett was one of the best writers in the English language. I think of him as like G.K. Chesterton or Wodehouse, P.G. Wodehouse. I think the guy was... no one understood humanity and the human condition or what it meant to be a person as well as Pratchett. Dostoevsky. I put him up there with Dostoevsky. But Pratchett's more funny. How do I think Critical Role has helped the D&D community? Well, I mean, there's so many ways I can't even get started, except I will say that before Critical Role, if you liked this game and wanted to explain to somebody who was not a nerd what it was, you were boned. It wasn't going to happen. You weren't going to get there. They weren't going to get it. They were not going to get it. And it didn't matter how long you talked or how loudly you talked or how wildly you gesticulated with your hands. They weren't going to get it. And going from no examples of play, really, I guess there was the Penny Arcade game, right? But the Penny Arcade game, I think, is pretty atypical. Most people don't only ever play once every 4 times a year on a stage in costume with, professional writers and the people who work on the game. But Critical Role were literally just a bunch of, they happen to be voice actors, but people getting together playing D&D in a way that is pretty typical in some ways. It's atypical in other ways, but I don't know that those ways are important. And so showing people, hey, it can be like this. People go, I get it. I don't think there's I imagine trying to explain baseball to somebody who lived in a world without sport. You wouldn't be able to do it. You wouldn't be able to explain why it was fun. Then maybe they would take your word for it. It seems important to you. Can I think of ways Critical Role has harmed the D&D community? Man, I think Matt Mercer is more important to the history of D&D than like Gary Gygax. And you're talking to somebody who holds Gygax's early work and inventions in incredibly high esteem. But so no, can I think of a way that Critical Role has harmed the D&D community? No. I think it is an unqualified good. How do I get past writer's block? Go consume media that inspires you. And I say this a lot, but I think people, maybe I haven't gone into enough detail. Go find media that challenges you. Go on Netflix or Amazon and watch something that is highly regarded. That's a good place to start. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. This is a human solution. It's not algebra. Go find something that's highly regarded that you would never in a million years watch, and watch it, because that will inspire you and it will fire you, and there'll be bits in it that really make you angry. There are times when I'm like, that's terrible. And that makes me want to go, it makes me want to go create something in a response. But yeah, go to Netflix, go to Amazon Prime, go find a movie that is highly regarded and that you would never in a million years watch, and give it a shot. And if you give up 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes in, okay, hey, you gave it a shot. But that consuming, challenging stuff really gets your brain firing and fizzing and all these crazy ideas. How many people watched The Chain of Acheron, the first 5 or 6 episodes, and came away from it going, man, I didn't know D&D. I didn't know you could do that. I thought you had to start at first level in a tavern. I didn't know you could be like fucking spaceships going through different dimensions, and that he literally ripped off a Star Trek episode, and then he said he did it. He said, hey, I ripped this off of a Star Trek episode. I didn't know you could do that. I got to go watch. I bet that was that one. People in the chat and people afterwards were like, there's a book I read and I think I can turn it into an adventure now. In fact, I'm pretty sure I can. Never thought of that before. So going in, consuming stuff that challenges you and makes you go, man, I didn't know you could do that, has a huge impact on your creativity. Scott, thank you, Scott. I love your avatar. $50. $50 is $50. Would I do another online session of the Chain or anything online D&D if I felt I could? What do you mean? Am I writing another novel? Yes. Fighter is in progress. In fact, I'm optimistic that Fighter will get done this year. Or maybe I should say a draft of Fighter will get done this year. I feel really good about it. I'm working on the heist. I worked on it today. I worked on it yesterday. And we're going to assign it to writers like a real product, and we're going to develop it explicitly. Is this the first time an actual adventure has been developed with professional writers and designers just for a D&D stream? I think so. But we're going to do it, and hopefully it turns into a product that we can sell, but that's not the primary goal. The primary goal is that I can run it for my friends. It's just that these are uncertain times, and anyone who says otherwise is trying to sell you something. Thoughts on the Wheel of Time versus Pratchett? One of them is readable, and the other one is going to require a visit to the doctor and medication. Ryan, thank you for the $5. What do I think it takes to make a successful D&D stream? It depends on how you define success. I think the Chain of Acheron is very successful in the goals that I had, which were putting my game in front of people so that people who had just watched the YouTube videos and imagined some crazy, highly theatrical, highly entertaining to watch, consumable, would be disabused of that notion. It really, from the very beginning, I realized as the crowd started to grow, I was like, okay, these people are imagining a very different game than the one I run. I run a game that is in some ways a very normal game. I think the fact that I'm a writer and I've been doing this for a long time means that my game is different than other normal games. Most games right now are people just getting started. But I don't think there's anything in my game that I'm doing that you couldn't do. Let me put it that way. I don't think there's anything I do in my game that you couldn't do. Maybe it would take you a while to get there. I've been a professional writer for 30 years. I've been an amateur dungeon master for a million years. And I wanted to make sure people understood you can do this. And if it seems intimidating because you hear these stories, but the story, which is awesome, isn't the game. The game is really mundane. And I also believed, and we talked about this in the one-on-one video, that there are things I do that new players don't realize you can do. And that if I put the game in front of them and I share my notes and I do an after-action report, which we call the campaign diary, then people go, oh. And in that context, the Chain of Acheron to me is a huge success. As a product, meaning something people are entertained with and engaged with and grows an audience, I never thought it was going to be really anything. Everyone around me was convinced it was going to be huge. I don't know why. I don't know why they tricked themselves into thinking that. All the evidence was there. I had a very conservative idea of the level of engagement we would get, and we never reached it. We never came anywhere close to it. So it depends on what you mean by successful. For me, the Chain is successful because it has inspired a ton of people, and it has shown people what a real game of D&D looks like. They're very idiosyncratic. Real is not the same as typical. I don't think my game is typical. I think it's very atypical. But your game should be atypical. If it's not, what are you doing? What are you wasting your time for if you're making a game that's the same as everybody else's? So it depends Hidden Cube 142 on what your goal is. If your goal is to engage an audience and grow it over time, monetize it, I don't think you can do that with online role playing. I'm not sure that's possible. We'll see. I haven't given up on growing the audience of the chain. I talked to my friends, some of whom work with me, some of whom are part of the chain, some of whom are just folks I know at other game companies, about what could be done to grow the audience of the chain in a way that we've never been able to do before. And we have lots of ideas, and we're going to try them, presuming that we all keep playing. So it's not like I've given up on the chain as a product, but it should not surprise anybody that the least popular thing MCDM does, which is the live stream of the chain, is also the one thing Matt produces in a category that he does not consume. I watch tons of YouTube. I watch more YouTube now than I ever watched TV when I was a teenager in the 80s, and we watched a lot of TV. I watch way more YouTube now. I also make YouTube videos. I consume a lot more fiction, and I make fiction. So everything else I do, I consume games, I make games. The live stream is the only one that I don't. So maybe your stream would do better than mine, because if you consume a lot of live streams, then you'll be highly educated on what makes them successful. Even my Twitch streams, even my normal everyday Twitch streams, which have just like this, I think of as being about as successful as the Chain of Akron, because I watched a lot of Twitch streams and I was fascinated by them and the people who did them. And I felt like I understood how to do it. I understood what made them successful. I don't necessarily think I have it in me to be successful in that context, but I feel like I understand it better than I understand the success or failure of online D&D streams. Like I said earlier, I think the jury's still out on whether or not playing D&D live is an entertainment product. Cole Evans, running Strahd as the final boss soon. Any thoughts for making him interesting? You got to surprise the players. You got to give him villain actions, things that he does at the end of his turn. There was somebody who used the straight up bog standard goblin boss that we kind of created communally in that action oriented monsters video, and said when the goblin boss shouted the command and all the goblins all moved, one of my players literally said, "Oh shit, that is a successful boss." Because suddenly the boss is doing something totally logical, makes total sense that the boss would be able to do this. The players never question that ability, even though they don't have that ability. They never question it. They believe it is something, in your case, they believe it is something that Strahd could do. That's the trick. But they're like, oh, good Lord, I didn't know that was possible. Rob, I actually don't know what you're talking about. As far as I know, he was. What are my thoughts on seeing Tolis in 5th edition? That Tolis book is enormous and awesome. Huge inspiration for me for Capital. Not the only inspiration. But I think I would assume it would be great. There has never been a better produced source book, with one possible exception. That's still nowhere near as feature rich as Tolis. So I suggest people check it out. Can we get a better name than Action Oriented Monsters? It sounds boring. I can't stop you from making up names, man. I hope I can't. I wouldn't want to. So let's see. Where else are we? I think I've answered all. How long have we been doing this? An hour and a half? That's not bad. Actually, not a full hour and a half. We'll go for at least another half an hour. If the jury is still out, how would I categorize? Well, I think there are exceptions. I think there are exceptions. Like, I don't think that, there's all sorts of things in real life that you look at and you go, I think only that, I think only George Lucas could have screwed up Star Wars the way he did in the 90s. That doesn't mean every Star Wars movie from now on has to be bad. Well, Alexander Stubbs, I took action-oriented monsters as opposed to, there were people who I knew who said you should call it like MCDM monsters. And I was like, no, I want people to focus on the design and how to implement it, and I want them to believe that they could do it, and I want them to try it. I don't want them to be thinking about me. So no, I'm perfectly happy with action-oriented design. Odd Levi, what? $200? Oh no, 200. I see. That's North. What's that? Is that South Korean currency? What's an NOK? Is it Nederlander money? It's from some part of the world that's not this hemisphere, I think. Love the Running the Game videos. Well, I love your videos, Odd Levi, and thank you for the support. A one-shot that turned into a 4-year campaign. That's the best kind of one-shot. That's the best kind of one-shot. I think when people say one-shot, don't they mean single adventure? Do they literally mean something you're going to do in one night? Because how much D&D can you play in one session? Is one encounter, especially if it's a session where people are making their characters for the first time. what do I think about players? I'm in favor of them, who want to spend downtimes doing very simple things like train pets, hunt, when other players want to spend their downtimes doing robust activities. I don't have an opinion about that. That's kind of the purpose of downtime, is to let people do different things. What would be the point of it if everybody was doing the same thing, or even, I should say, even the same kind of thing? Do I have any advice if you have an event or something that you want to happen? As I 35, thank you for the support. Do I have any advice if there's an event or something you really want to have happen in the story, but you don't want to railroad your players? First of all, roller coasters are on rails, and people seem to like those. So don't. We may need to do a video on this. People imagine that, like, maybe this is the thesis statement of the video: player buy-in is different than player agency. Or maybe maybe it's more important. Player buy-in is way more important than player agency. This notion that everything in your D&D game has to happen as a result of the choices that the players made, because that's player agency, and anything where you take player agency away by limiting or removing their choices is bad. I don't know where this zeitgeist has come from, but it's antithetical to everything we know about human behavior. People do better, typically. They do better. They like the idea, they like the illusion of choice, but actual real choice freaks people out, and they prefer to have hard and fast, narrow, clear options. So if you have some dope ass thing you want to happen in your game, you just need to have it be flexible enough that if you present your players with choices, this thing can happen either way. They don't know that you lifted this encounter that was supposed to be for choice A and you put it in choice B. They're going to think this is natural. This is what was supposed to happen. So but I will say the flip side of that is, while the more you run, the better you're going to get, the more flexible, and the better you're going to get at taking this cool thing that was going to happen and kind of, oh, they didn't go this way, they went this way, and going, okay, you will learn how to do that. The flip side is, I routinely have stuff happen in my game that I put a lot of work and a lot of design into, and the players just skip past it, and I'm like, okay, that's part and parcel of being a dungeon master, is sometimes the players' choices should result in things going in a completely new and crazy direction. That's happened several times in the Chain of Akron. I certainly did not imagine they were going to be where they are now. I had 2 or 3 other different plot lines that I expected to play out, and that they didn't take the bait. They didn't take the hook. And that's part of the fun for me. Part of the fun for the dungeon master should be discovering these crazy things that you had to invent on the fly. And that's why I use the word discover, because it's going to feel like discovery. I didn't make this up. It doesn't feel like I made this up. It just felt like this is naturally what would happen based on the crazy stuff you players got up to. Then I guess this is what happens next. And that feeling of discovery should be really powerful and attractive to you. Otherwise, I think you're a novelist in disguise. And speaking as somebody who has written a couple of novels, it's a very different juice. The juice of being a novelist is very different than the juice of being a dungeon master. They're very similar skill sets, but they're very different. If the only thing that interests you is your world and your storyline, then you're not a dungeon master, you're a novelist. What you should be doing is you should be putting scenarios and situations and drama and tension in front of your players, and then step back and just be amazed at how they deal with it and the choices that they come up with and the motivations that they invent. You put the map in front of them and they decide they want to go fight the dragon and rescue the treasure under the mountain. You're like, oh, I just put that on the map for flavor. Poop. Now I gotta, right? But what happens out of that is going to be way more interesting than whatever nonsense you had planned. Gravity Bits, thank you for the RSD. Thank you for the support. Do I have any advice for running a rival adventuring party? No, I don't think I've ever really done that robustly. I might use retainers for something like that and then convert them into, I don't know. Have I read the Silmarillion? No. I've read bits and pieces of it, but I like writing. I like writing, and writing has drama and tension and dialogue typically. And I find the Silmarillion, it lacks that stuff except in the same way that history does. But I have read quite a lot of the History of Middle-earth series, of which the Silmarillion is sort of part of. So I know a lot about the past of that world, but also the development of the writing. Thank you for the support, DKK. Stred Dogman, I appreciate first of all, I appreciate your support. I appreciate the offer of the handmade metal dice. If you send it to our post office box, I think we will get it, although in this day and age, maybe wait for the outbreak to send it to us, because who knows how long it's going to be before we check the mail again. Thank you, Lord Duroc. GM Scott, it's the first time GM Scott has caught one of my streams. Well, it's the first time that I've caught you catching one of my streams, so we're even. Hey, you watched the interview with Robin? Yeah, awesome. Has that rekindled my desire to interview State Azure? Absolutely. State Azure is super cool. He and I have corresponded on a couple of instances. So if we get one of the things I thought I would be doing right now is I thought I would be flying out Dr. Jackson Crawford, who has quite a lot to talk about now that he is the one of, if not the advisor on the Assassin's Creed Viking game. So there's a lot to talk about with Dr. Crawford. And I believe he's leaving his full-time position and moving into a role of being an author, advisor, and YouTuber full-time. I'm not sure. I don't know all the details. And trying to get folks like Rick Beato or Jane Nicholson on as guests just for an interview. Other fellow YouTubers. I thought I would be doing that now. Alas, fate has conspired against us in an entirely predictable but non-specific manner. Do I have a background in history? Nope. Other than having lived through some of it. Nope. Arn van Rolen, thank you for the Scandinavian monies. The Norwegian kroner. Is it Norwegian kroner? Thank you for the 50 Norwegian kroner. I appreciate it. No, I don't have a background in history. I'm just I'm unburdened with family and the responsibilities that go with family, and that gives me a lot of time to do things like learn and better myself. I'd rather have the family, but in the absence of that, I enjoy reading and learning, and it's something that will never let you down. That's what Merlin said in The Once and Future King, and he was right. Learning is the one thing that's never going to let you down. So I spend a lot of time learning. I don't mistake my passion for these things as the same as being an expert in it. And I also don't if I'm inspired by something, even if it's of dubious historicity, I'm still going to use it to inspire my work as a dungeon master and as a writer, because I'm not a historian. So I don't hold myself to too high a standard. A lot of people will share Dan Carlin's stuff, which I like. I love Dan Carlin's podcast. By the way, I discovered a new podcast. Those of you who are in lockdown like me and you're looking for content that you can consume, strongly recommend the Soundtrack Show. It's awesome. It's amazing. Many hours of high quality content deconstructing and explaining the music theory behind some of your favorite movies as music. Brilliant. But people share this every time somebody shares a Dan Carlin video, other people come in and they say, well, don't forget that guy's not a historian, and you got to take everything he says with a grain of salt. You need to take things that historians say with grains of salt, because they don't agree either, and they're experts. So this is one of those things we've talked about in the Twitch channel a couple of times. Is one of those things that even finding an expert, even going and finding an expert, which Dan Carlin is not, I am not. Maybe I'm an expert on Dungeons and Dragons. Like, this is a great example. Even finding an expert on, in this case, Dungeons and Dragons, does not absolve you of the responsibility of critical thinking. You still have to employ your critical thinking. And through that filter, you can go and consume anything and convert it into something that you appreciate and use. I joined a month-old game in 2017, played 2 years, until I was asked to retire, Wild Barley. Thank you for the support, by the way. Should I be hurtful? Should I be hurt or grateful? Well, I mean, I can't tell you how to feel. If the other players in the game treated you in a way that makes you feel hurt, then feel hurt. But my advice is move on and find something positive and creative to do. Be proactive. Say, well, if they kick me out, I'm going to start my own group with blackjack and hookers. What do you do to make elves feel like gray aliens? Put the spurs to her, Chuck. Thank you, Captain Chaos, $5. I mean, do you even understand what makes this bird go up? Well, the engineering alone would... Funding makes this bird go up. No bucks, no Buck Rogers. Well, Jim's elves, what did he do to make elves feel... I don't know, like, that's such a interesting question. Like, he didn't give them emotions or reactions, right? They had motivations. There were things that the elves wanted, but we never really understood what those things were. I still don't. We could guess, and maybe our guesses were good guesses, but the elves never gave up any of that. So yeah, he played them as creatures that lacked emotion and had motivation, but we never understood what it was because they were aliens. I'm not a huge fan of... I run my D&D game not entirely unlike I would a science... Like, I love space opera. Love space opera. And I have a highly developed understanding of what that term means in terms of genre criticism. And one of the hallmarks of space opera is lots of aliens. But we don't make those aliens so alien that we can't engage with them as characters. Jim made his, because we want to like Spock or Chewbacca. But Jim was not presenting the elves as characters in a novel, main characters that we would like and want to hang out with and wish they were on our team. No. He presented them as a challenge. Maybe that's a better way of looking at it. He presented them as a challenge. And so he could make them science fiction aliens in a way that you would only get in something that's not space opera. In space opera, all the different aliens are all different kinds of humans, human traits expressed in different ways. The human experience reconfigured through different lenses. Tolkien talks about that. He has a great, one of his letters, he talks about how like really elves and dwarves are just different kinds of humans. Technically, he goes, I'm not an idiot. I know that biologically this doesn't make any sense, but this is what the story I wanted to tell. And like, okay, well, I would like it if it did make sense biologically. So I tend to run my D&D game like a space opera. Dwarves and elves aren't just different kinds of people. They're aliens. But they're space opera aliens, right? That we can identify with and hang out with. Jim made his aliens, his elves, like they were a challenge, which they were. They were not characters to hang out with or recruit. I mean, we could have probably recruited an elf, but he would have just played him like another gray alien. So hopefully that's a good answer. What are the things that motivate, inspire? First of all, thank you, Jared, for the support. What are the things that motivate, inspire? What are the key things, motivations, inspirations that are needed before beginning to write a campaign? I don't know. I think generally you have to, I think most, maybe all good campaign worlds are like reactive. There's something in some fantasy that you read or watched that made you go, that's stupid. And now you're going to do it right. And I have no idea what that thing might be. Or also there's something that you have a positive reaction to that has nothing to do with fantasy. And you go, but what if I took this thing I love from this other genre and brought it into fantasy? Oh, that's two great tastes. It tastes great together. And that inspires you. So that, I think that is how you begin the process of building a world, is you're either reacting to something that you've seen in fantasy before that you hated and you're going to fix it. Which, you know, even Lord of the Rings is that. Like, even Lord of the Rings is him being like, man, I went and saw Seven Dwarfs, that stupid Disney movie. That was terrible. That's not what dwarves are like. And those were some of the things that motivated Tolkien. I See Dead Llamas, thank you for the support. They've amassed an utterly massive force to fight a looming threat, and they're nervous on how to handle it. Well, I don't know. Are you talking about warfare? Because I know a couple of different solutions for that. But you don't need my advice. You can look that stuff up. I think that the challenge is I See Dead Llamas, that when you're pitching a big battle, a big climactic conflict, you need to sit and think about, what do the players need to see happen in order for this to feel satisfying? Because that's more important than it being realistic or even necessarily comprehensible. The players need to feel like, yeah, that was awesome. That's what I expected to happen. Or it's unexpected, but in a dramatic way. And that's a very different process than trying to figure out how things should or might work from a simulationist point of view, or even a gamist point of view. Like, what's fun to play? What's fun to simulate? Well, let's focus on what's dramatically satisfying. Like, what needs to happen in this battle in order for the players to go, this now I know this is the climactic battle. Look at this crazy stuff that's happened. Then you can add on stuff like simulationist stuff or gamist stuff to your taste. I think we're almost done, folks. I hope you folks feel like this was a good chat. I feel like it was really good, by the way. We covered a lot of ground. This isn't wildly different than the chats we do on Twitch, except I think we have a much different audience here, so we're getting a lot of different questions we don't normally get. John Carroll, thank you for the gifted stuff. Thank you for the support. I've been thinking about running 5 or 6 one-shots in different time periods. That sounds cool to me. Do I think this would work? Man, the answer, I think anything's going to work if you're motivated to do it. The specificity, if that's what motivates you to run, then yeah, it's going to work. Well, the Black Iron Pact isn't literally a rival party, like as in run by players, or even necessarily, and they were action oriented. So that was the birth of action oriented design. So they weren't really, They weren't really like designed to function. They are the illusion of an enemy party, but not like a rival party. Awesome, Roland Webster. Yeah, people seem to like the retainers. Not some people have a very strong negative reaction to them. I think mostly the people who have a strong negative reaction to the retainer design are imagining that the goal of the design is to simulate a PC, but it is absolutely not. They are not PCs. It says that in the rules. These are not PCs. They don't use the rules of PCs. They're, you know, they're very different. They're very different, but they're easy to run and they're super useful. And if you can get into that mindset, I think you will like them. But some people are like, no, it doesn't make any sense to me that this weapon does more damage to my player. It does less damage to my player than it does to my retainer because of the way the rules work. It's like, why not? Like, weapons do different damage to different people all the time. Why can't it? So it's not a panacea. It's not a universal cure. But thank you for supporting the channel, Roland, and I hope you get a kick out of the Amethyst Dragons. I think Strongholds and Followers, Dan Buchanan, thank you very much for the support. I think Strongholds and Followers is perfect for the West Marches because Strongholds and Followers, unlike Kingdoms and Warfare, Strongholds and Followers is predicated on the idea that each player is going to be building strongholds in their downtime. And that's great for individual initiative, individual rewards. A stronghold is like a big magic item, and we don't typically have communal magic items that we all get the benefit of. But I think if I were going to revise that book, I would make it more group-oriented because I think that's kind of what people expected and kind of what people want. But if you're playing in a West Marches game, I can go recruit some other players and go off into the forest and build a keep or a castle or whatever. It's mine. Oh, that sounds great. I love that. Jeff Cochran would watch a supercut of me saying people's usernames. Thank you for the support. Daniel Wafer. Do I have any advice regarding West Marches that I didn't have 3 years ago? No, I haven't run. I would probably have a lot of advice. I don't know that I've ever run a strictly West Marches game before, but I would like to. Maybe that's something we would do after the chain. I don't know. Misha Mross, thank you for the support. I think Wangrod is a beautiful name. Yeah, I think the Welcome to D&D video is great. I don't know that it gets a lot of juice these days. Maybe we need to rename it, like How to Play. I think if the name of it was How to Play Dungeons and Dragons, I think the people who need to find it would find it. I think generally speaking, the Welcome to D&D video is just basically found by people scrubbing through the whole list. And that tells me that it's not getting the juice that it needs. So how do you folks feel like this chat went? I actually have no idea how many people are watching right now, but I know how to find out. I have the power of the internets. Holy crap, 2,200 people. 2,200 people, see? Awesome. That's a lot of people. Good, I'm glad you guys, I'm glad some of you got something useful out of it. It's free, so you can't complain too much. Turns out, Plague is good for viewership. I'm at 49. I don't think I could. It's not that I disagree with you, but I'm not sure I could do this. One of the things I like about the Twitch chats is it's a group of people, largely the same people, hanging out together, and so the discussions can evolve and can grow over time. I don't think I could do this more than about once a month because it's crazy. What do I think about world-ending threats? I think they're great. We should have them. Excuse me. So thanks for hanging out. I don't know what the next YouTube video is going to be. People, I think the Dune video attracted new people because they're freaking out, wondering when the next Dune video is going to be. But we're still 3 or 4 or 5 episodes into 5 or 6 or 7 episode long series that I haven't finished from 2 years ago, because that's the idea, is that just because I say, hey, we're going to talk about Dune, we're going to do 3 videos, that doesn't mean it's the next 3 videos. But I think the script for the next Dune video is about 80% of the way done, and we went over it live. I read it live on Twitch. Seemed like it was pretty well received, and I was inspired to start a new Running the Game video, which we might record next week, which would be, pretty good as far as timing goes, on traps and how to use them. John, thank you for your support. Painting minis is a fantastic hobby. Any plans on running? Well, I mean, I've got a treadmill. And also, yeah, Lord Duroc, I thought maybe, before I got inspired to do traps, I thought maybe the 3rd edition video would be next. So, is there a script written for the next 2001 video? No. I think what I want to do is I want to make kind of the definitive YouTube 2001 video, and that would take a lot of work and research. It was a thread on /r/movies about movies that are critically the critics loved and that you couldn't make any sense of. And in that thread, people started talking about Shape of Water. And the thing that surprised me was how many people watched that movie and thought it was about a woman who falls in love with a fishman. When indeed, a woman does fall in love with a fishman in that movie, but that's not what that movie is about. And if you think that's what it's about, then you probably came away from that movie thinking that was dumb. And so it made me go back to my script. I did a whole script about 80% of the way done for The Shape of Water, and I never turned it into any kind of video. And it made me think this could be a good candidate for doing a movie video that doesn't have me in it. It's literally just clips of the movie, me talking over it, kind of classic YouTube movie essay. So if that worked, then I think the epic 2001 video could work. But I have a bunch of books here on the making of that, and I would have to some of the, Let Me Know just did a video on DB Cooper, which is great. I think, Zoomers and millennials should know about stuff that happened before they were born, and DB Cooper is kind of one of these classic 70s unsolved mystery things. And you can tell this dude did a lot of research, and that's the kind of thing I would like to be able to do. I would like to be able to sit down and just spend a couple of weeks not doing anything except researching and taking notes on a topic like 2001. I already know enough about it that I could speak extemporaneously about it for quite a while, but making a really polished video requires me going back to all these things I've read and taking notes, so they're sourced and they're accurate, and then and that would be a lot of work. And I think we might try something like that with The Shape of Water. So, and Graham Morton and a Manhattan Project video like that, or a series. If we did, but this would require Jerry doing a lot of work that I'm not sure he's down for, because he doesn't know, I want to produce the script, I want to record the audio, and then hand it off to Jerry and have him assemble all the clips. And I don't know that he is confident of that being in his wheelhouse. What is The Shape of Water about? It's about outsiders. It's about outsiders and about It's a movie about Camelot, except it focuses on the people who clean the stables, which is something that we hadn't really got before. So, thank you for tuning in, everybody. Those of you, if this was your first stream, I hope you had a good time. If I said anything that freaked you out, I apologize. We do this a couple times a week on Twitch, and the chats are a little bit more cozy, which I like, by the way. I don't know when the next YouTube video is going to be, but I'm probably going to spend the next this weekend working on Kingdoms and Warfare, getting the playtest ready. And in fact, I thought about recording, and I kind of got distracted by this stream. I was going to record a new Friday night video about Fermi approximations, but it's possible I could still do that, but I don't think I really have enough time. Austin Mount, I love you, Austin. Thank you for really mustn't overdo it. Thank you for the support. All right, that's it. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Every time we upload a new Running the Game video, I want to do a live stream that Friday. So next time you see a Running the Game video go up, you'll get a live stream, hopefully. And we talked a little bit about the reception on the one-on-one video. We talked about a whole bunch of other stuff, tons of great questions, tons of people in chat with support. And so I think that's it. If you want more of this stuff, you can come follow us on Twitch. Otherwise, just wait and you'll get another live stream probably after the Traps video, which I'm really excited by. I didn't even know I was going to do a Traps video until 2 days ago. And now I've got a script already in progress. Until next time, be seeing you.